Today, we discuss how ingenious the Electoral College is, why it is so important, and how the left is deranged when speaking about it. I am Bob Nettleton, and I am going to save America. What if I told you that many of the things that you were taught in school in regards to the United States and democracy were lies? What if I also told you that you were taught a certain way to believe in certain things so that you would never question it? I promised you I'm not trying to be Morpheus from the Matrix here, but I might be onto something. Hear me out. Now, you've probably heard really bad things or a lot of negative comments towards the Electoral College ever since 2000 with Bush, or even as recently as 2016 with Donald Trump winning the Electoral College but not winning the popular vote. Same thing with George Bush in 2000. It's only happened 4 times in history of our country. But even today with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which I probably butchered that, I'm sorry, calling it an old racist American relic that needs to be abolished. Now, before we get into my defense of the Electoral College, and before I explain to you just how asinine that last comment was, let's first define the term. So for those who don't know, the Electoral College is the means or the way that us people here in the United States use to elect our president every 4 years. There are 538 total electoral votes. The goal of the candidate to become president of the United States is to win 270 of that, aka 538 divided by 2 plus 1. So a majority of the electoral votes gets you the presidency. Now, you might be wondering where that 538 number comes from. Well, in short, 100 of them are senators, 435 of them are representatives in Congress, and 3 come from the District of Columbia. So basically, all the members of Congress makes up the total Electoral College vote. And if you're wondering how the number of electoral votes given to each state is decided, it's pretty simple. So the U.S. Census every 10 years comes out and does a population report and then redistributes the electoral votes accordingly. For example, California, being the biggest state population-wise in the United States, also has the highest number of electoral votes at 55. Where Iowa, which has only a population of around 3 million or so, has a total of 6. So electoral votes are based upon population. Now that we understand what the Electoral College is and how it works, what's the big uproar about it? Why do so many people, especially those on the left, want to call to abolish it? Now, you may hear arguments stating that it is a threat to our democracy, your vote doesn't count or is unequally represented, or that small states are given too much power, or that maybe we should even switch to a popular vote. Well, I'm here to tell you why that's a bad thing and why you shouldn't think that way. I would like to begin dismantling each of these arguments by trying to explain to you that these arguments are stemmed from a misunderstanding of the foundation of the Electoral College. Now, let's look back to when it was created by the founders. So what had just happened? So we had just gotten out of a war and became an own independent country from the tyrannical overreach of Great Britain. Now, the founding fathers, fearing this, put the Electoral College in place, as well as a separation of powers in government to ensure that a tyrannical body and a tyrannical leader would never rise again. So some of you might be wondering what tyranny is or what tyranny means. Well, in short, or to put it simply, it is an oppressive or cruel government, leader, and or electoral body that forces its views or forces its means upon the minority, or in general, a given population. Now, the Electoral College was put in place to prevent this from happening to the minority. Now, you might be wondering what the minority is in the United States that I'm speaking of. Smaller states or smaller population centers. So this is where the argument arises from the left in regards to the popular vote. They look to argue or push for that one person equals one vote, and that the candidate who has more votes should be president. Now I'm going to try and explain to you why this is wrong and what the flaw is in this thinking. Now, when these people argue that without the popular vote, we are not a true democracy or a pure democracy, Well, that's just it. Now, you're probably taught in school that the United States is a democracy, but guess what? We're not. The United States is a constitutional republic of states with democratic ideals. And there is a major difference there that you are not taught. And it's very, very important to note that we are not a democracy for a reason, or a pure democracy for a reason. A pure democracy, all throughout history and time, has never and will never work. This is because the popular vote is done through mob rule, and it harbors or silences the idea or the values of the minority. Now, the founders took this idea into practice. And the reason that they created the Electoral College is to ensure that the minority will always have a voice. If we were to run off the popular vote, for example, why would any candidate ever go to any of the states with little to no population in comparison to states like New York, California, or Texas? Why go to Iowa, which has a population of 3 million in the entire state, when I can go to Los Angeles and reach 2 to 3 times that many people? There would be no reason for a candidate to ever visit smaller states simply because they are trying to chase votes in higher population centers. And building off of the idea that people in different areas have different values, I want you to think about this if we were to implement popular vote. Now, if we had the popular vote, people in California will be deciding how people in Iowa or the Midwest run. Now, I hope that a little common sense light goes off in your head and you realize how this could be a problem. Because people have different values, there should be no reason that someone across the entire United States from us and here in Iowa should be dictating what we do, or that they have Iowa's best interests in mind. It just simply doesn't make sense. Now think about it. If we had the popular vote, and we'll just do a fun little hypothetical. California's tax rate is a lot higher than Iowa's. Now imagine if we had the popular vote, California then in turn elected someone, because of their population, that says that we here in Iowa now have to pay 2 to 3 times the tax rate that we already have to help pay for the interests of the people in California. I hope you can see where the error comes into play here, the issue with mob rule mentality. Now, going back to an idea that I have expressed in previous videos in regards to leftism and how it works hand in hand with collectivism, you can kind of see how the left works also when it comes to voting, or how it looks to push these means of agendas from their ideology to everyday life. Now, it is also funny to It's also funny to mention how these people on the left try to argue that they are the voice of the minority, or they give voice to the minority, when they initiate or try and push an agenda that would totally eliminate the voice of the minority because it gets their agenda passed. Leftism is based in collectivism. And this is one of the many hypocrisies that you see in the left today. So, in closing, the Electoral College was a system created to ensure that a tyrannical body or tyrannical leader will never come to fruition again. And that without it, the coast will be ruling the entire country. Now, if there's one thing that you take away from today's video, I hope that it's that you learned, or at least know now, that the United States is not a democracy. We are not a pure democracy, and we are not that for a reason. We are a constitutional republic of states with democratic values, and that pure democracies have never and will never work. And I think it's also important that you take away that without the Electoral College, the voice of the minority would be silenced or forgotten. Now, time for the roast of the week, and I'm sorry that this video is very low quality. This is the best quality video that this actual panel was recorded on, so I do apologize, but this is Ben Shapiro, one of my favorite people to listen to, dismantling Black Lives Matter on a panel. Hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I do. Give a listen.
How can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, and when, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Anybody can jump in. It's an open mic there.
But there has to be racism. You can't say there's no racism.
Without evidence?
No. I'm just saying that I don't know which animal. Maybe we're talking about dogs or something. I'm talking about human beings, and I'm like, human beings are most likely going to have racial prejudices. I'm just so sorry. I'm just so sorry. I don't know. I don't come from. I come from planet Earth.
Charles, I want to ask you a question. So your default is that when there is no evidence, racism is the deciding factor. That is
No, I was not saying that. I'm just saying that you're going to have sexists, you're going to have racists, you're going to have all this stuff. I mean, I'm just saying that.
I agree it exists, but the problem that I'm seeing, and this is the problem with the general conversation, is that there's no solution in simply saying there's racism out there. How does that solve anything? I mean, when you talk about there's institutional racism, what does that mean? Show me a law that is racist in intent, and we will agree. Show me a police officer who commits a racist act like we saw in South Carolina, right, where a police officer shot a black man running away and it was obviously unjustified, and I will agree. But the idea that you can craft a narrative based on no racism because it just must be somewhere out there in the ether, that doesn't solve problems for anybody and creates more problems for people because now they grow up in a milieu and an environment where they are told that every obstacle they face is from some shadowy, nameless, faceless group who's out to get them simply because of the color of their skin. They'll never succeed in that environment.
If you made it this far, thank you for putting up with me. I hope you guys learned something today. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, share it, or subscribe. That really helps me a lot. Really appreciate it. Sorry I haven't gotten a video out in the last couple of weeks. I've been really busy with work. I was in San Antonio, as well as just been busy at work in general. A lot of things going on in my life with hunting season and stuff too. But future videos are coming. I think we're going to be tackling the gun debate or gun control in several videos. It's probably going to be like a 3-part series because there's so much substantive data on it. Anyway, again, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share it, whatever. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys within the next couple of weeks with the next rollout of videos. Have a good one, guys.